Ready when you are, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody to tonight's planning meeting. Just to remind everyone, it is a virtual meeting, so those watching on YouTube, just bear with us if we have any technical issues, and we'll get them sorted out as soon as we can. So onto the agenda. Any apologies?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Howes, Chair.
Okay. Is Councillor Jelly subbing, or is it?
Yes,
Yep.
Chair. Yeah, he is.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No, excellent. Minutes from the meeting held on the 19th of January. Is everyone happy there is a true record and I can sign them off?
Yep, they're fine.
Yeah. No urgent matters, so we'll go straight on to the agenda and we'll take it in the normal order because we've got speakers for the first two anyway. So starting with 5.1, Burton Latimer Community Gardens, Community Centre even, sorry. Richard, I believe that's you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is. Yeah. So this is a proposal for single-storey front extension with associated external works. Yeah, that's the application number. So this is the site, the existing community centre in Burton Latimer, the junction of Pioneer Avenue and William Street. This is the existing site location. So there you can see in the grey the existing building with the parking provision to the east, and then the open space with tennis courts and play provision to the south and southwest. Next slide, please. So this is shown in the light, the existing access to the site within dark, light grey arrows showing the pedestrian access points into the site, and the black arrow showing the current main entrance to the site from the west. Next slide, please. So this is the current building, dates from the 1970s. Two monopitch roofs with a sort of flat roof central element. Next slide, please. This is important. This is the internal floor plan, existing floor plan of the building. So there you'll see sort of on the southern element of the building is the main multi-use hall area. With the north and northwest sort of changing provision and other sort of ancillary rooms and services internally, and then to the sort of northeast, a bar area, which is I'll come on to in a minute. Next slide, please. So this is the proposal. So in dark grey to the east of the building, you've got the new extension to the building with a multi-use room and new entrance. A widened access at the main access point onto Pioneer Avenue where that light blue arrow is, and then to the right, sort of southeast of where that blue arrow is, in the area where currently there is sort of temporary informal parking. The parking provision is going to be tarmac there, so increasing the parking provision on site from 21 to 29 spaces. As part of the proposal, you'll see those in the red dots. There are 3 trees which need to be removed to facilitate the development. There is a condition on the recommendation that you'll see for landscaping details, including planting, replacement planting as part of this proposal. Next slide, please. So this shows the extension there. The top diagram, proposed elevation A, shows the extension there. So following the existing sort of roof form of the building, obviously limited in extent and complementary in style to the existing building, and only able to be sort of glimpsed from anything other than that sort of east elevation of the building. Next slide, please. So here you can see again that floor plan, but this is the proposed floor plan. Key element here is that dark blue section to the right hand side to the east of the development, which is that new built form. It's the new extension to the building. Next slide, please. So here we have the bound treatments. So you see that there's some railing sort of consistent with a similar treatment that's already there, but a widened entrance with suitable visibility displays, and just to make that entrance point a bit safer and easier to utilise for all those users of the community centre. Next slide, please. So this is the existing east elevation of the building where that new entrance would go. That shipping container, which is used for temporary storage at the moment, would be removed as part of this proposal. And there's obviously a benefit of the scheme to remove that from the building. Next slide, please. That's a sort of wider shot. You can see that pedestrian access running across the north of the site there, with the neighbouring property to the right, the nearest property being 30 William Street, and the car parking provision there to the south of the site on the left of the photograph. Next slide, please. So that's the existing main entrance to the building on the western elevation. Next slide, please. Again, another photograph of that main elevation as it's experienced at the moment. Next slide, please. And one looking slightly further from the south across the sort of southern elevation of the building there, and then up there on the right-hand side, you can see the car park and beyond the sort of main entrance to that car park area. Next slide, please. And this being the south elevation of the building. Next slide, please. And this is looking north from the car park area. So to the left of us would be the sort of the end of the new eastern extension, and that's the nearest residential property that's referenced in the report at 30 William Street, with its looks like secondary window serving a bathroom, we believe, on that elevation. Next slide, please. And that's the entrance again that's to be widened. You can see there at the moment it's a bit of a pinch point, so it's going to be widened to 4.5 metres in width. Next slide, please. Yeah, can you take me back to the proposed floor plan, Callum, please? The blue and light blue, that one. That's brilliant. Yeah, so as you'll see from the report, the actual works and the actual elements that are before us this evening are sort of limited in extent. The nature of the proposal has led to, as you've no doubt seen from the agenda, a number of objections and a significant petition from the local residents. We've also had comments of objection from the parish council. It's important, as has been sort of stated in the report, it's important just to highlight that there's the elements that are before us this evening are obviously only those ones that need planning permission. So in particular, a lot of the comments and concerns have centred on the removal of the bar from that northeast area of the existing building, and its replacement with changing room facilities, and the impact and the perceived impact on that for the local community and those users, both in terms of employment, but just as in a community facility. As covered in the report, obviously their operational elements and internal alterations to the building, which obviously don't need planning permission in themselves, so they're an operational change that could occur without planning permission. So obviously we've covered those elements in the report, as you'll have seen, and addressed them where necessary. But it is those external changes, the extension in particular, obviously the surfacing and those external works, which are the elements that need planning permission, rather than those related to the loss of the bar provision from internally within the building. There is obviously, as you can see on that diagram there, to the sort of south of that dark blue area in the new extension, there is a sort of flexible, described as a flexible function room space, which obviously could serve a range of facilities or uses moving forward, and that would obviously be for the occupier to determine that. You'll see from the report that we've got a number of conditions. Those ones obviously I've mentioned about soft landscaping and the replacement trees. There's also some about need to cover amenity aspects, and to obviously ensure that the developments are carried out in accordance with the approved plans. But overall, we recommended it for approval, subject to those conditions set out on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Shall we have our first speaker then? Maxine Cousins, is it?
Just coming through now, Chair.
Thank you. Good evening, Maxine. Can you hear us? You are on mute at the moment. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome. You've got 3 minutes from whenever you're ready.
Okay. We are not, number one, we are not opposed to the alteration of the community centre. We are opposing the removal of the lounge bar, hall bar and cellar from the building when the renovations take place to make room for additional changing rooms and showers, which in our experience will not be used. We have the support of Burton Latimer Town Council, the local community and the thousands of people who visit the community centre and ask Kettering Borough Council to reconsider the proposed internal alterations and retain the much used lounge bar and hall bar for the good of the local people. Kettering Borough Council has a responsibility to council taxpayers in the area to provide a cost-effective facility which does not need to be subsidised by Burton Latimer Town Council by adding an additional precept to the rates to cover the running costs. By removing the bars, the incomes from the building will be greatly reduced. These alterations could lead to the loss of a fantastic community facility. In view of this, we respectfully ask the councillors to reject this planning application. The community centre is the only building used for sports and social activities in Burton Latimer. It has full disabled access to all areas and is used for many types of sport, including keep fit, martial arts, indoor football and bowls, covering all ages, fundraising for charities and clubs. The changing rooms do need modernising, but get very little use. Over the last 18 months, we have encouraged more football teams, but they prefer to have a social drink after their game than a shower. The income from the changing rooms in 2019-20 was £389. Amended plans have been drawn up as requested by Guy Holloway, showing that the lounge bar and bars can be retained while including additional changing rooms in the building. If visitors bring their own drinks into the building, this could lead to antisocial behaviour in the building and surrounding area, which is an alcohol-free zone. We are concerned that the external cladding to the extension will be a magnet for vandalism and a potential fire hazard. Based on our experience, this refurbishment with no bars will lead to a reduction in the use of the centre. The income from the bars subsidises the running costs of the building. During the year 2019-20, the takings for the bar was £92,640, despite the year being cut short by COVID. This is a substantial turnover for a community centre and shows how much it is used and valued by its customers. Charges will have to be increased to make up the shortfall left by removing the bar income. Any increase in charges will make the hire less affordable to small sports clubs, organisations and the local community is designed for. If the £900,000 earmarked for the renovations can only be spent on sports activities, why not spend some of the money replacing the concrete floor in the hall with a sprung floor, make it more suitable for all types of sport? As a result of removing the bars, jobs will be lost, which I am sure is something that no one wants to see. That is everything I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Maxine. I think they'll put you back into the waiting room. You can watch the rest of the debate on YouTube.
Okay,
We have our next bit is Ruth Green, Councillor Green. Evening, Councillor Groom.
Oh, good evening, Councillor Rowley. Good evening, everybody.
Okay, when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say a few, I won't be very long. I would just like to say a few words about the application for Burton Latimer Community Centre. I would like to, I note that it's recommended for approval, and I would like to support that application. I would also like to thank Guy Holloway and all of the officers for the work that they've done on the plans for the community centre. And I'd like to thank Guy Holloway especially for the way that he has engaged with the town council and with the local community. I know that it's a bit controversial. I think some members of the community think they're going to lose the community centre, but they're not. It's just that it's going to be a bit different. But there is a chance to spend some money on the community centre. It's been looking tired for many years, really. I used to take my children there when they were young. I mean, it was looking quite tired then. It's a nice facility, but it does need to be updated. It will still be a place for community use. People will still be able to go there, to be sociable, to have time together. But it will, obviously, there's a lot of emphasis these days on healthy living and on sport, and there's a need to address those. It's important to address those needs. So I would like to support the application and to thank the officers. That's all I would like to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
So if we bring in Councillor Currell. Evening, Councillor Currell. You're on mute. Still on mute.
Am I now?
Yeah, that's good.
Lovely. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for letting me speak this evening. The Town Council discussed the original application and raised objections to the plans following resident correspondence. A petition was raised by residents against the removal of the bar facilities. The Town Council raised an objection to this in the original plans and with Guy Holloway. The Town Council feel this is a much used community asset within the town, and bar facilities should be retained. After the objection was received, the application was changed to include a bar facility. The Town Council are aware this is not what is in place at present. We are aware this is causing some controversy with patrons. The Town Council fully supports any plans that work together with the community to retain a community facility that can be enjoyed by all residents of the town. So please, can I urge you to rethink and amend this application to retain the bar and the lounge? Now, on a personal note, I have been to the community centre for various events, from weddings to the elderly Christmas party. And I feel if you take away the bar facility, you will take away the fabric of the building. We can have a community centre that Burton Latimer deserves, but we need facilities for all the residents. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. Put you back in the waiting room. You can watch the rest on YouTube. And then our final speaker for this one's Alice Power. Good evening, Alice. Can you hear us okay?
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yeah. So you've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. So good evening all, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name's Alice and I'm an architect at Lungfish Architects, and we designed the scheme based on the brief provided by our client, Kettering Borough Council. So this scheme that we've designed aims to rejuvenate the community centre, making it look and feel more inviting and creating a more attractive venue for the local people for years to come. To provide better provision to support outdoors and sports and recreation, which we understand was one of the requirements of the Section 106 funding, which is helping to fund this scheme. To provide additional space within the facility to allow adjacent community activities to take place, in addition to those that already take place the existing hall and to modernise many of the facilities at the building, such as changing rooms, showers, toilets, and the overall look and feel of the premises, as well as upgrade things like the electrics, the lighting, doors, and the drainage, all within the available budget. In particular, we feel moving the entrance so that it's more visible and making the frontage of the building more attractive and welcoming will provide a real opportunity to help attract and keep new community centre users. We understand that Kettering Borough Council carried out a public consultation, leafleting all homes in the local area last year. The consultation leaflet explained that the lease that the current occupants have on the property, which is owned by the council, was expiring, and set out objectives and proposals for the building. This consultation was completed by 347 households in Burton Latimer. We understand that the results of this consultation showed 70% support for the proposals outlined for the community centre, and that the common theme that emerged here was that the building is dated, it looks tired, and it's in need of rejuvenation. Although we weren't directly involved in this consultation, it's always encouraging to take part in a project that has the potential to improve the facilities and the life quality of the surrounding local neighbourhood. This is what we feel this project can provide, subject of course to planning approval, funding availability, and the successful delivery of the scheme. Thank you for taking the time to hear what we've got to say.
Okay, thanks for that, Alice. You'll be put now in the waiting room. You can watch the rest on YouTube. Thank you. So, councillors, no one wants to speak? Councillor Jelly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to the speaker spoken on this application. Ask the officers, looking at this application, can we understand the rationale for removing the bar area and all of that part, put in changing rooms? I mean, it's a community centre and it's been used sort of over a good number of years, you know, for events, and obviously a bar is a central part of that if you have an event to put on. So surely the bar was, is, and will be a revenue stream for the community centre going forward. So fully under the rationale of removing the bar to put in extra changing facilities.
Do you want to answer that, Richard or James?
Yeah, sorry, I can't answer that because I don't know the rationale behind it. Just obviously we're only dealing with the planning issues, which are the extension and the external works.
Yeah, so we're as Richard said in his presentation, it's the extension that we're looking at as the planning application, not the internal changes.
Yeah. Chairman, I might be able to give a little bit of. I mean, I don't know the full ins and outs because it's obviously come from leisure services and a different part of the organisation in relation to the operational needs of this building. But my understanding is that you know, there's an evolution in terms of the needs and the opportunities to deliver sort of different kind of services through this revised extension and layout. And I think that you know, the funding that goes with it, I think, comes from a position of funding a particular type of use, which is more sports generated rather than sort of bar and leisure activity. But I think, as has been said before, you know, this planning application potentially doesn't preclude, you know, keeping a bar or having some sort of facility within there, but it's really kind of refocusing this to provide a range of different services for the whole community. And I think it was felt that the bar within that would be changed to a different type of facility to service these new sort of uses of the community centre and the area around. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Chair.
Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
yeah, I think this brings up a lot of questions, because yes, we are looking at the planning, but if you look on the reasons why we're putting forward this and you want it to be passed, I don't think it meets it, because it's building a strong competitive economy. Well, we've already heard that we're going to lose a lot of money from the money that comes in. The commit says policy 7 for community services and facilities. Well, there's a lot of people in Burton Latimer and the town council who don't think this is going to provide as many good services and facilities as experienced before. And emerging policies, protection of community facilities and proposals for new ones. Well, I don't think we're protecting the existing ones. My real concern is that we talked about proof of increase, that these changing rooms instead of a bar is going to be had. I can't see any proof or how that was done. The flexible function room, which we talked about, has got no access to that servery. It hasn't got the support of the local people. And if this is 106 monies, I think that's not the same as having Sport England money, is it, where you can't spend the money on anything to do with bars. And the other thing, on page 8, it says they wanted to include a submission that meets the needs of the council. But we should be looking at the needs of the people, not the council is there to serve the people. How much extra use? There was examples of use of people using the changing rooms, but some of those games and the sports that we were talking about wouldn't need showers. People playing bowls, I don't think, need showers. Can we spend some of that money on a sprung floor? What engagement was taken with the people? Because if you look at all those examples of objections, I just wonder how many people were engaged. I don't think it will be inviting or attractive to local people. So I think there are reasons there that it doesn't quite meet these policies that we think it's going to meet. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few concerns with this application. Primarily, it says the funding, this £700,000 funding. Was that come from one of the monies? I thought that the town has a say in how it's spent. That has been the case in the past. So it can all be coming, and I don't know it's not England, because if it's Sports England, it would only be spent on sports things. In which case, we'd be spending it on a sprung floor, because that would be the better thing for the community. I have concerns. I couldn't see properly on this, on the plan that was sent in. The original plan is fine because obviously it's black and white, but because the amended colour, it wasn't very clear. So it wasn't until you put it on the screen you could really see. But it seems now we're going to have a whole plethora of changing rooms. Changing rooms aren't going to be used. At the moment, 2 football teams, they're both men's football teams. They're not children's, they're men's. And then in the bar, we have quite there, and guess what? They all go in the bar. The function room is used for weddings, it's used for funerals, it's used for christening, it's used for birthdays. You need that bar. I think what we're doing, this application should actually be changed, because I think all we're doing is an extra space on there. And what is actually the cellar at the moment is made into an entrance and a free flow area. What is the bar prep area become a service? So it's all space, space that actually isn't going to be used. And there is the bar sitting room, i.e. the place where people and communicate and socialise, which is what we've all missing out on and what we're crying out for. There's going to be a changing room. And then next to that, there's going to be another changing room. But there isn't anything in there that actually uses the changing rooms. And I think really it's a misuse of 106 funding. I know a lot of us got this, but I really don't think that people understood the complexity of what was going on and what was to be changed within this. And I think given the amount of comments about this, I appreciate it's not really within the planning remit, but it is for the reasons just stated by Councillor Thurland. And I think, can I just quickly just take you back to page Lisa saying about the extent to the community centre. It's on page 7 where it asks with the police. It's saying there needs to be CCTV there because of the way that because of it. So it's possibly being used for CCTV. And also, my concern is as well, they're taking away area, there's a big area, it's like a container, and that's where all the seating goes in. Now, they spent a lot of money on new seating and new chairs. In fact, the Borough Council gave them money to buy that new seating and the new tables. They're the fold-up tables for all the events they hold. And they're all stored out in that facility. Under these new plans, barely any storage, or what is being used for storage is actually at the minute going to be, was a servery and is now, and an office, and both of those are now being converted to storerooms. I just think this needs looking at again and coming back so it suits the purpose for which it was built. It is a community centre. So I would ask really to view it. And the other thing, there were at the beginning of this on I can't remember which page it is now, it does say 3 different plans submitted. So is that what consulted on? And the other 2 plans were rejected. So what in front of us is the 3rd plan. And did those other plans include a bar? But this one doesn't. So it loses its requirement as a community centre. And therefore, I think it's going to lose that revenue. And it does concern me that it'll become a white elephant and we will no longer have a central hub. It's the only place that it's accessible for everybody because it's flat, it's on one level. And it really concerns me that we would lose a fantastic facility for the sake of grading it in not an appropriate way. I really don't think it hits the top, really. Thank you.
Okay. Richard, or do you want to comment on whether there's been 3 revisions on the plans?
There have been some revisions on the plans. It's been in with us for some time, since last spring or summer, off the top of my head. I don't think there hasn't ever been a bar that I recall on it. I think the revisions, like on any application, have been to address consultation responses through the process, but I don't believe there's been a bar on any of the iterations. But obviously the one that we're determining tonight is the one that's in the papers. And
they've been consulted on the 3?
If there were amendments that required consultation from a planning perspective, yeah, we would have reconsulted on. But I think the comment is about the consultation that leisure services have undertaken. Again, that's outside planning, so I can't comment.
Okay. Councillor Titcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I ought to declare some sort of interest in it because I enjoy beer myself. I belong to a sports club, as most of you know. I think most of you know what sport I follow. It's one you don't have to run around in too much, obviously. It's an amalgamation of 6 clubs I belong to. We have a bar. We travel around. In fact, all the sections travel around to various places, and one thing in common is the bar. It's a social banter time afterwards. To actually lose the bar here, I can quite see this, as some people have said, the fellow councillors have said, that you are going to lose on the process here. It is a community centre that people enjoy a drink. They don't have to drink alcohol, I know. But, you know, I can't agree with it. The proposed floor plan doesn't have any allowance for even a mock-up bar. I can't agree with this sort of thing. I'm impressed for the first time with our paperwork we have before us from 25 onwards, the amount of people who put it in, took the bother to write in, going on the objections. It's quite extensive. It's impressed me. I do object to this, and I have a proposal, if I may, Chair, with your permission, that we defer this and for discussions on fitting a bar in there, and also perhaps a sprung floor, so a dance could be held in there also. That's what I have to say, Chair. Thank you.
James or Emma, do you want to make a comment on that? Or Richard even?
Well, I think it's not the planning department's requirement to justify, another department's position in relation to what this operation is going to deliver. That's the our remit is to decide whether or not this is acceptable in planning terms for a community use. Now, if another part of the organisation has deemed that it's not primarily a bar that the council wishes to support, and it's a community facility which provides services for a range of different groups and uses. And I understand that the bar does provide a financial support to the facility in the community centre, but whether that is meeting the council's objectives in relation to providing sports and a healthy living and a healthy lifestyle and access to those type of facilities for all the community, I leave up to members to decide. But I think that's where the other part of the council is coming from, that it's making changes to this facility which is for the better for the long term and for the health and the activity of the community. I don't know the business plan in relation to how any shortfall in relation to funding could be made up, but I guess there is one, and there will be that would have been taken into account. So that's all I can say in relation to how planning department has kind of considered this. And from our perspective, I think we would support that proposal from another element of the council, and we put it forward for recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Morton.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the other councillors and the points they've made against this application. I personally couldn't support it for those reasons, and the main reason being you seem to be turning what is a community centre into a sports hall with no consideration for the existing residents, what they use it for. It just probably take many years over time. I look at the changing rooms. When I go to Morsley, the changing rooms are not even used because they're too expensive. So they don't even use changing rooms. And all I can see in this place is changing rooms where nobody is really going to have a community because there's nowhere to sit, no atmosphere, no nothing. Even the people who indulge in the sports, especially football teams, etc., they just won't even want to go there. They'll be going down the road to the club or to a pub down the road because they can't even get a drink in there. Whether that's alcoholic or non-alcoholic, they can't even sit there and have coffees afterwards. It's just not a community centre. There is no community in this. It's a sports centre or an attempt at a sports centre. I do ask the question as well. This is run by Kettering Borough Council. I always understood that Kettering Borough Council have to pay for the bar staff and all things like that. Is there an interest here that by doing that, you've basically made it almost unmanned? I'd be interested to know the logic of why this needs to be changed. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I really can't support it because the one thing it says is community. There will not be any community there. If you want to build a sports centre, build it somewhere else on the other side of the fields. Then they can have the changing rooms, but I don't think people use them because, as they said there, what's happening in Morsley, very rarely used.
Okay, thank you.
Can't support it.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very difficult application because I actually congratulate on the amount of money that is being spent on the community centre, and I think, like some of the people that spoke at the beginning said, it is money that needs to be spent on this community centre. It is a building that is in need of repair. It is a building that needs in need of an update and a refresh. But I think I'm thinking alongside of the others. It's not a community centre anymore. If you change that, it's not a community centre, it is more of a sports centre. And I think we, the community team, need to go back to the drawing board and have a look, listen to the residents, listen to the objections, and put something in place that the residents actually want.
Okay.
And the other thing, this past few weeks I've been learning a lot about trees, and also at the beginning of this you have mentioned that 3 trees, I think it is, are going to be removed. I know you're going to replant them somewhere else, but this really needs to stop. We, we can't keep removing trees, and I think that that does need to be said.
Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to correct something. I want to come back. The money is actually used. I said 700,000. Apparently, it's 900,000. Just looked it up, and it's and so I add the bar takings last year for 1920, when it was terminated early, were £92,640, and those men then ploughed back. So they run, and then they run the separately for the, which is why they gave a figure earlier for how much from the rent. So it kind of gives you a figure for what's going on. I am concerned. I think like policy 7 does apply, policy 8 applies. I think it's inappropriate use from one companies. I think it's taken away the community. You can't do in a load of change room. People are going to use it. It's a concrete floor. We've got places that got proper sprung floors. You better in that money, putting a sprung floor in there, just update the change room that they've got, keep the bar area, and not have just wasted space. We've got a community centre in another area, and there's wasted space there, and we find it. But it's still, the entrance is just not used. People don't mill around. People go in, do their sports, come out, and in that community centre, they go and have a drink, and they socialise, and they fundraise for many different charities. It's untrue, and they fundraise that go in there and use it. That's what a community centre is for. It's the hub. It's the heart of Burton, and it's the heart of a lot of places. Bindon comes over. You get a lot of people using that. So I just wanted to correct really what I'd said, that I think it's appropriate use of the monies. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Chair, yeah, I'm really just agreeing with a lot of the comments that have already been said. I mean, I think the key one for me is it looks like we're taking a community centre and turning it into a sports centre. And I think that the line for me is on page 1. I mean, I don't like applications where so many people, including the town council, who always know their needs much better than anybody else. But there was one particular line which I've lost now, which was on oh, there you go, which was part of the appendix, which really hits it home for me. It says, "Oh great, take the heart out of our community. Another cost-saving exercise by faceless people that don't have a clue what this means to Burton." And I think really for a member of the public to write that just really sums up quite succinctly. And again, like Councillor Thurland said, I've looked at the principles for supporting it, and really I can see as many reasons with those principles that are listed in the papers to not support it, because I don't see that it's building on any community or community need. So I'm minded along with the rest of the speakers tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thurland, is it something new?
Yeah, it is, Chair, because I think we all agree that something needs to be done there. But the general thought here is that, are we having to spend this money? Is there a time scale that, you know, it's been brought in quickly, we're having to spend it without full thought and consideration of the people? And I'm quite happy to put another recommendation that goes against this for those reasons that we said on page 10, unless we can defer it, as Councillor Titcombe says, and I'm quite happy to take advice, as I'm sure we all are, from Emma, of which way we do it.
I can answer on the money side, because I know we discussed it in an executive meeting 2 years ago about spending the money here. So it hasn't been a quick decision.
So there was plenty of time for consultation then, Chair.
Well, we've had consultation. That's why there's so many objections.
Chair, if I can assist in terms of a deferral, We would normally try and shy away from deferrals because it's sometimes very unfair on the applicant, who can then appeal against non-determination. Clearly, the applicant here is Kettering Borough Council, so it might be that if members would like some reconsideration in terms of the reconfiguring internally and the loss of that community asset, which is the bar, then it might be that in this instance, it would be appropriate to defer this application, certainly rather than refuse it to go back to the applicants to reconsider that.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I ask on that, Emma, if we defer it, is there any chance that nothing gets changed? If we refuse it, then it has to come back with a different application. Otherwise, it's going to have the same result. I'm just concerned that whichever way we go, it's got to be what's best for the residents of Burnt Latimer, especially that person who wrote in that Councillor Adams spoke. That's my only concern on our choice.
Sorry, can I? I mean, if we defer, if you're minded to defer it, then it's up to the relevant departments to talk to each other and see if they can come up with an internal solution to it. If you reject it, then it's back to the drawing board.
Exactly.
And either one will, if they put a new application, it comes back here. If it's deferred, it comes back here.
Yeah, I think that we just need to reject it.
Reject, yeah.
I think so.
And I will say it doesn't, section 6, it doesn't build a strong competitive economy because we're going to lose money. Policy 7, we are losing community services and facilities. And policy HWC2, the protection of community facilities, as we've heard from a number of residents, they feel they're going to lose their community facilities, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry. Sorry if I'm not going to speak very strongly. I don't have the ability at the moment. I always go on about communication. I've said it so many times. And this application has communication from the residents, and the residents say no. For that reason, sorry, I'm really struggling to speak. For that reason, I can't approve to this, literally because of the volume of passion that's come from the residents of Burton saying that they don't want this. And if it's a case of we reject it and send it back saying we want a bar there, I would support that. But on the grounds of it, because of sheer volume from the residents speaking, I can't approve this or vote in favour of this. That's I can't actually speak anymore.
Yeah, you take a breath.
Yeah.
Well, Councillor Hara, is it something new? Otherwise, we'll go on.
No, sorry, it was just really to what Councillor Thurland says that I can.
Okay.
Chairman, could I just make a comment? I think in relation to, I mean, you know, members are at liberty to refuse it or defer it. It's down to what members wish to do. However, I think the reasons for refusal, you know, the facility is not going to be lost. So it's going to be potentially changed in relation to what services are delivered through there. But, you know, that's an operational issue which part of the council has put forward in relation to the range of services that are offered through that facility. And I think in relation to, I think there was a comment in relation to the funding in the section 106. I mean, at some point, I think that would be clawed back if it hasn't been spent by a certain time. But I'm not sure if Richard knows whether or not that's imminent, or there would be an opportunity and a chance to put in further revised plans on the back of that. So yeah, I think in relation to reasons for refusal, members just need to be careful about what ones they choose, because the facility obviously isn't being lost in its entirety. And the point is also that, you know, there are a number of people through the consultation that the council undertook that actually do support this. You know, we've heard that there was 70 odd percent out of the 300 odd or 400 odd that responded that do actually support the proposals. And so there's two groups that value two different things potentially. But members will make their decision, and I think you just need to kind of be clear in terms of what you're refusing it on, if that's the way you go. Thank you.
Okay. So the recommendations to approve, do I have an alternative? Councillor Thurland?
Yes, as I said on those, if we're using them for the reasons why, then I think we're going to use them as for the reasons not to. And if you had 70% of 300 people, that's 210. Well, if you look at how many have come in and objected, I really don't think that's a good case of doing it. So I still stand that I will propose that we refuse this, Chair.
On what grounds? Can you say it again so we're clear?
We don't think this is building a competitive economy because we're losing so much money. We're losing community services and facilities, as we've all heard, the bars going.
Can we not do a speech? Can we just do the...
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah. National NPPF number 6, Development Plan number 7, and the Emerging Policies HWC2, as I said before.
Okay. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Morton to second. Okay. Where's it gone? Eden, could you do a vote, please, on the amendment?
Certainly, Chair. So this is a vote on the amendment to refuse. Councillor Thurland.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Jelly. Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Titcombe.
For.
Councillor O'Hara.
Councillor?
Sorry, Councillor, nothing came through.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you. And Councillor Morton.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, so that application KET 2020-0189 is refused. Okay, so on to item 5.2, the Kettering South north of Isham. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Struggling to unmute myself. Yes, this is a reserve matters application. It's a reserve matters application in relation to landscape and layout for the estate road, together with flood compensation, foul and surface water drainage, and structural and soft landscaping. So this is the site, Kettering South, also previously known as sort of Symmetry Park. Orientation of this is slightly skew, so we've got north to the left and south to the right. So that's sitting to the south of junction 9 of the A14, bounded to the west by the A509, to the east by the Midland Main Line, and obviously to the north by the A14 itself. Next slide, please. So this is the plot, the parameters plan that was included within the outline consent, and gave sort of an indicative indication of the subsequent built form that was to come forward on the site. You'll notice there that on the eastern side, there was an indicative flood management corridor, and I'll talk about that again in more detail in a moment. You've got the access point from the roundabout there at the southwest, with a landscape buffer to the south, and then the 3 plots internally, with that at that stage, that indicative road running sort of from west to east, and then running from south to north through the centre of the site. Next slide, please. So this is a plan that shows the works that are proposed here. So you've got from the access road there at the proposed access point at the southwest of the site, you've got the access road running from west to east across the southern area of the site, and then moving from the south to the north through the centre of the site, what they're calling through the estate road. As part of that, and you can sort of pick it up here, but I'll talk about it in more detail. The significant thing is the reprofiling of the land, which is proposed there. So that creates one level plateau of land on which the subsequent development plots and development parcels could come forward through other reserve matter applications at a later date. To the east of the right-hand side there, as you see it, of the estate road, there's a swale, so part of the flood attenuation package for the scheme. And then to the right-hand side there, between the site and Midland Main Line itself, there's a flood mitigation channel. Next slide, please. So this is looking at the north of the site. The area in yellow is the utility buffer. There's a high pressure gas main which runs across the site. This will also be utilised to provide the utilities provision for the site. You can see there the arrowed areas are the embankments which take off the site from existing levels down to the plateau, which is in the sort of central element of that diagram there. In the sort of pinky colour to the west of the site, and I'll pick it up again in the next plan, is the 3 metre wide combined footway and cycleway, which runs from the south of the site along the estate road before diverting west and then following alongside the A509. Next slide, please. So this is the southern half of that same diagram. So you've got the access road there coming in at the bottom, the estate road there, and then you can see a bit more detail, that swale element to the eastern side of that estate road with combined footway cycleway running across the northern side of the access, the western side of the estate road, and then you can see there diverging off to hook with the A509 and link with the existing provision across the A14 and down into Kettering. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It doesn't pick up very well because of the scale of the diagram. If you look in your agenda papers, sorry, on page 51D, this is an important diagram because it shows the reprofiling that is proposed across the site. So in the sort of, you can just about pick it up there, but in the green, sort of dark green colour there is the existing land levels, and the red is the proposed land levels. So that first sort of cross section there, that's looking sort of from the taking a section from the eastern side of the site, looking across towards the railway and across towards Weetabix. So on that diagram, the left-hand side is the north of the site, the A14. The right-hand side is the south of the site, halfway nearest towards Station Road and heading towards Isham. The second section there is the western side of that section. So again, you've got the A14 on the left-hand side of that diagram, with the south of the site on the right-hand side. You can see there on that section is about, and it's covered in the report, about 2 metre difference in reprofiling there. But importantly, at the southern side of the site, so on that second diagram down on the right-hand side, it's mirroring existing land levels there. And then on the right, and then the bottom two diagrams are cross-section from west to east. So we're looking there, and that the third diagram down is one taking sort of the northern section. So on that diagram on the left-hand side is the A509, and on the right-hand side will be the railway. And that's there you can see the amount of land that's being removed from that western element of the site. It's maintaining sort of consistent levels within the centre of the site, and then increasing slightly towards the eastern side of the site, achieving that level platform across the whole central portion of the site. And again, that's shown on that bottom diagram, but that bottom diagram is taken from sort of further south in the site. So again, you've got the A509 on the left of that diagram, cutting across. The little depression you can see in the middle is the swale alongside the estate road. And then on the right-hand side, you've got that flood mitigation measure before you get further to the right of that, which would be the Midland Main Line itself, which obviously sits outside the site. Next slide, please. So this is the utility provision. That top diagram is just showing the different utilities and the depths at which they would be proposed to be placed within the utility buffer around the edge of the site. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Richard, is Mark still on the call? Has he dropped out or is he still on? His chair's still on.
Bring him back in now.
Has he come back in?
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, right, good.
Sorry about that.
If you go back a slide, Callum, sorry, just check where we are. Yes, that's the utilities one. Yeah, next slide, please. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so this is part of the landscaping details. I'll talk about them in some detail. But you've got the woodland planting to the western side of the site and to the sort of northwest. To the south of the site, you've got a noticeable landscape buffer, which we'll talk about in some more detail, but you've got a range of native species there, but also through consultation, concerns were raised about the evergreen cover on that boundary. So there's 100 Scots pine proposed to go in there. A number of those are specimens that are in the sort of 2.5 to 4.5 metre in height range. Some of them would be whips, but there are a number that are that sort of heavy standard sort of size. So would provide a degree of cover early on in the development phase. And importantly, I'll touch on it probably again in a moment, but importantly, a number of those planting are proposed to be undertaken during the commencement of construction rather than at a later date that was originally envisaged. Next slide, please. And this is a close-up cross-section of the access road. Those light blue dots, which are not particularly easy to see on that diagram, are the lighting details. They're the lighting columns that would sit alongside the access road and also the estate road itself. And there's also some planting there, which is covered in the report. And again, I'll probably touch on in a moment, but there's planting alongside the access road to try and screen that, particularly from views from the south. Next slide, please. So this is just some details just showing this, obviously just showing the site in context there. So you've got obviously Weetabix and the Triple SI to the east of the site beyond the railway. To the south, you've obviously got the relationship with Isham, which is picked up in the policy within the joint core strategy. And again, I'll try and go into a bit more detail on that in a moment. And obviously bound to the north by the A14 and the A509 to the west. Next slide, please. So this is the dualling. It's obviously not part of this application, but just for members' information, this is obviously the dualling element of the proposal, which got approval, and that's the access roundabout, which links to this access point into the site. And that was secured. It's covered in the planning history. That planning permission was secured through KUT 2019 0666 at March, in the start of March last year. Next slide, please. And this is taken from the outline details, but this was the indicative sort of master plan element that was submitted that showed the original sort of envisaged built form of the site, with again that landscape buffer to the south, and that flood mitigation and management corridor to the east. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the policy in the joint core strategy, and it's the area, and in the policy 37, it identified two parcels of land, this being parcel B, and set out some policy considerations. One of those being the strategic landscaping to the southern element of the site and the improved landscape screening to the western element of the site. Obviously, they were considered the actual principle, as covered in the officer's report, the principle of the scheme. Its overall sort of visual impact was obviously considered at the outline stage. It's now for this application to consider the impact of that plateauing, the ground reprofiling, the details of that landscaping that's proposed on that southern element, and those flood mitigation measures that are forming part of this element that would then allow the other reserve matters to come forward at a later date, the actual development parcels themselves. Next slide, please. So it's touched on a number of times, and I'm sure we'll hear comment from speakers this evening, but obviously the relationship with Isham is one of the key ones with this scheme. The site sits, I think, the nearest point from where the cemetery is, just to the east of that sort of bottom right diagram, where that number 7 is just to the east. That is the cemetery in Isham, and that's a distance of at least 430 metres. I measured it this afternoon from the site. So we're looking at the nearest residential properties in Isham being in excess of 430 metres from the site. This shows the existing view. So there you see the existing Weetabix factory even on the right hand side, and in the sort of centre ground there would be where the development site would be. Next slide, please. Here you've got the visual interpretation, so like a sort of photo montage of the built form that is proposed there at the relevant distances there. Next slide, please. This is looking from the sort of southeast corner of the site. This is looking in a sort of west and northerly direction. So there you can see the fall of the site from that falls from both from north to south, but more significantly from west to east, towards the river and towards the Midland Main Line. Next slide, please. And again, they're looking from the sort of central position on the sort of western boundary of the site, looking up the A509, but looking across the site itself. And again, you can see that they're quite slope on the site, and that was always envisaged to need some profiling to allow for those B8 development that's obviously proposed as part of this scheme. Next slide, please. And again, this is another scheme looking from the sort of eastern extent of the site, so looking right by the railway line, looking across the site back towards the west and the southwest towards the A509 on that ridge line there. Next slide, please. And this is taken from one of the public footpaths, obviously important because of the views from public vantage point. So this is a public footpath that runs just sort of north of the Sorrels development in Isham. And there you can see highlighted in sort of red brackets at the top there, this sort of position of Kettering in far distance, and then the position of the application site as it would sit within the sort of horizon. Next slide, please. And this is looking from Southfield Farm. It's looking from the northwest, looking across there. You've on the right hand side, obviously you've got the A14. You've got land falling down towards the valley, and then obviously beyond rising up again, you've got the application site itself. Next slide, please. Can you take us to, back to, keep going. Keep going. That one's fine. Yeah, if you go to the next one, Callum, please, sorry. Yeah, that one's fine, thank you. Yeah, so I'll try and just talk through the points as they came forward in the scheme, so to ensure that I don't miss anything. So we've got the construction of the estate road, which I've mentioned before. So obviously runs that north-south within the site with the 3-metre combined footway cycleway running alongside it. The ground reprofiling. It's important to note that there's going to be quite a significant area of land that's taken from the west, and that'll obviously lower the overall height of the building. So as that's covered on page 30 of the agenda, looking at the highest point in the southwest edge, there's going to be 9 metres taken out, and then it runs through to across to existing levels before built up on the eastern side by up to about 4 metres. And in the north to south profile, it's going to be up to about 2.5 metres. But as I mentioned, on the very southern edge, it's using the existing land levels. On the tree planting, obviously, this is one of the key elements that is covered in the report. Just try and find the numbers. There are Yeah, the right page. So there's the overall there's 7,000, just over 7,200 trees proposed through this scheme. A number of natives, and like I said, over the site, 2,000 Scots pine, 4,400 native shrubs, and over 8,000 hedging plants, and together with 2,000 square metres of meadow, and that meadow is on the right hand side of the site, on the eastern side, because obviously it forms part of the flood mitigation strategy, and so therefore wouldn't be appropriate for hedging. And then 60,000 square metres of meadow for wetlands, and 40,000 square metres of species-rich meadow. On that southern element, the application, as is covered in the report, comes forward in the same light as the original outline consent. So there's up to a 60-metre depth of landscape buffer on that southern element. Concerns have been raised, as you note from the Regenda papers, particularly from residents in Isham and the parish council, obviously about the impact on that element, and as it relates to obviously that sort of indicative area that was highlighted in the overarching joint core strategy policy about that strategic buffer in that area. As is covered in the report, with those sort of larger specimens, given the mix that's there, and obviously having reference to those photo montages, the officer's assessment is that that there are buildings up to 18-metre ridge heights proposed in this development that would obviously not be screened initially, but it's about how that landscaping, the significant amount of landscaping and soft landscaping that's proposed across the site in general, how that would help the site to visually settle within the wider landscape, and not be a harmful or jarring element within it. And the policy on the joint core strategy talks about helping to minimise or limit those visual impacts, and it's the officer's assessment that the proposal comes forward under that guise. On the habitat creation, there's the site at the outline stage is found to be not especially biodiverse rich, and therefore there's improvements and enhancement that are proposed as part of that package, linked to obviously the soft landscaping. The flood compensation and drainage measures, some of them, as you see from the report, some of the conditions which were set on the outline have been discharged with the agreement of both the lead local flood authority and the environment and the environment agency. The key thing is that obviously there's that swale within the site, and then the pumping stations are proposed that would limit the discharge from the site to greenfield, to equivalent to greenfield levels, and anything beyond that would be retained within the site, either in those swales or in some ground cells that would be proposed within the individual development plots. On the impact on the historic environment, it is obviously in the setting of a number of listed buildings, including a number of parish churches and the like in the surrounding area, but there's been no statutory objections from that, and the proposal is consistent with the outline permission. Therefore, there's a lack of harm identified to those heritage assets in this proposal. The impact on residential amenity, I mentioned obviously the relationship to the properties in Isham is actually the nearest property is actually a sort of single property that sits just off that plan to the southeast on Station Road. But given the distance, as covered on page 44 of the report, it's not considered to be any sort of unacceptable amenity impacts to that neighbour in particular, or the residents of Isham itself. On the highway impacts, obviously key consideration at the outline stage, and lots of concerns were raised obviously about traffic and those types of elements, and obviously they were also picked up and debated at length during the dualling application, which obviously have both been approved. Essentially what we're looking for here is obviously just consideration of that L-shaped internal road network and the appropriateness of that. That we've got no objections on that element from the local highway authority. It provides good visibility displays, 7.3 metres in width. It's lit for safety reasons, but still shielded by the landscaping that's proposed, and therefore considered by officers to be acceptable in that regard. On the flooding, obviously I've touched on those conditions that were discharged. The hydrological modelling proposed and flood mitigation measures have been agreed by the Environment Agency, and condition 21 of the outline has recently been approved. It thereby follows that as this application includes the same measures, it is also acceptable with the Highways Agency returning no objection. The sustainability implications, talking about obviously climate change and those sorts of elements. There's a significant amount of planting that's proposed, obviously, as part of this reserve matters. The provision of sustainable forms of transport is highlighted, obviously, at the outline stage, and that's part of the reason for the combined footway cycleway element of this scheme, together with the turning space at the top of that access road, broadening the area where that 12A sort of annotation is there for bus turning and bus lay-by. And then obviously, as you can see, there's objections, as I said, from Isham Parish Council and some others, and they're covered in, or the officer response to those is covered in page 49 and 50 of the officer report. But in summary, subject to the conditions that were recommended, we consider the applications acceptable. The applicant's been willing to amend the scheme through the process to take on board the comments that have been received, and therefore we're recommending the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. So if we can call in our first speaker, Clive Hallam.
Just coming through now, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Councillor Hallam.
Can you hear me, John?
Yep. So you've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Oh, we can't. You're a bit.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, good. Okay. So my name's Clive Hallam. I'm an Isham resident. I'm Isham Parish Councillor, Ward Councillor for the Borough Council. Excuse me. Ward Councillor for the Borough Council, and also sit on the Shadow Unitary. I'd like to express a couple of concerns on this, really just to make you aware, and I'll focus on the mitigation for flooding and so on. Before I do general points, from the earliest inceptions of this, no one in Isham has been against development. What they're concerned of, and in fact, if you look at the borough comment, they're not against development. What they're concerned of is its association with Isham and the impact it may village. Seen from the early days, this site has grown enormously from its first inceptions, which was something like about a third smaller than this. So once we've gone through the joint core strategy and this outline was formed, we're now seeing the development on this site pushed out to the limits, and the amount of green planting around the edges being reduced to a level. And because of the topology, it's probably not going to have any effect for at least 10 to 15 years. But I'll my colleague will come back to that in a minute. Another general point, heard how the access road was granted permission some time ago, and I was at that meeting and spoke, and we were told very clearly that moving the access from what was around up on the Isham bypass down onto the 509 itself would have no financial consequence and would not be detrimental to Isham at all. I'm sure a few of you will remember that. It's interesting now that Highways have come out with a report where they're costing up the Isham bypass to say that because there is now a dog leg from this roundabout, there is additional cost because we've got to buy land that we didn't own, and also the Isham bypass second leg from this roundabout is going to run significantly closer to Isham itself. In fact, close to the side of Fairfield Road and round the top. So I do take some of these expressions that we're not going to have any effect on Isham with a pinch of salt. I'll come back to the topology side. Isham Parish Council had a meeting with the developers, and we were concerned about the heights and the layer of the land. We've gone from a split level site down to a single level, and any of you that come out on that road know that you drive down the 509 to the roundabout.
If you could wrap up, please, Councillor.
Sorry?
If you could wrap up, please. You've had your 3 minutes.
Okay. The roundabout site has flooded and closed the road 3 times in the last 12 months. The flood we've got houses that are only 20 feet away from the river when it floods at the bottom, and anything going down the Ise Valley there is going to have an effect on those properties. So
okay, thank you, Councillor. Thank you. We've given you way over your 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Pointless.
Okay, we'll put you back into the waiting room. You can watch the rest of the discussion on YouTube. Thank you. So if we call in Barry Hobbs. Hello, Mr. Hobbs, can you hear us? You're on mute at the moment. There you go.
I can hear you.
Okay. You've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councillors. I'm Barry Hobbs of the Isham Parish Council, representing their views and parishioners. And we're of the opinion that once again, the Kettering Borough Council planning officer is selling the people of Isham down the River Ise. If you decide to approve this application, you will have been coerced into this action. One of the big issues with this application, as far as we're concerned, is the substantial landscaping under provision. The JCS set out quite clearly what is to be provided, and this application falls far short. The limited amount of time given to me only allows me to focus your attention on the strip of landscaping to the south of the site, which faces Isham. This proposed strip is less than half of the width shown on figure 27 of the JCS. Please compare this to the proposed landscape drawing, and you cannot fail to see the massive differential. This narrow width, coupled with the proposed building floor levels, and the level of the adjacent boundary of Pytchley Brook, result in a narrow, steeply sloping section of land, rendering the planting ineffective against the looming 80 feet or so of metal cladding. We have requested that a series of cross-section drawings are prepared to show the situation, and we were assured at a meeting with Tritax that they would issue them. But of course, they haven't done so, because we believe how damning they would be. Please ask for those to be issued before you make a decision. What particularly frustrates us is that the Kettering Borough Council planning officer is well aware of this landscaping under provision, as he was notified by Mr. Simon James, the principal planner of the North Northamptonshire Joint Planning Unit by email as long ago as March 2017, yet he has done nothing to enforce it. We feel this is disgraceful. At the end of the day, if you decide to approve this application, after DB Symmetry have disappeared, oh, sorry, they already have, after Tritax have ridden off into the distance, it will be the parishioners of Isham who will be left looking at this unhindered view of the enormous cladded walls, ruining and cursing your decision for decades and the generations to come. Now, if I could just pick up on a point that Mr. Marlowe made when he was addressing you earlier and telling you about the scheme, he said that now there was to be a level plateau.
Yeah,
which,
could you wrap up now, please, Mr. Hobbs?
I will, yes. It's just one point. He said that there'd be a level plateau and this would lower the height of the building. It won't make the buildings any lower. The buildings remain the same height. What is asked for is the same ridge height as on the outline planning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Put into the waiting room where you can watch it from YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one, Mr. Councillor Hakewell. Evening, Councillor. Can you hear us? You're on mute at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready. I know you're not limited to time, but if you could keep it as succinct as possible, that'd be brilliant.
Sorry, just coming back in. Thank you, Chairman, for letting me speak. Obviously, I'm Jim Hakewell. I'm the Borough Councillor for the lion's share of this particular development. Just listening to the other comments that people have made, if someone said 4 or 5 years ago, we're going to build warehouses here, and this is what you've got to do to mitigate the impact on this land, I think we would have said it's not a suitable site. It is a ridiculous situation when you start to talk about the amount of land that is moving. And it's the failure of the Joint Planning Unit to actually engage with the community and understand what's going forward. So it really is a disappointing scheme. And it's a scheme which, just because you can bring earth moving equipment in and reshape the landscape, it doesn't mean to say that that's the right thing to do. The screening which is talked about, brilliant, yes. Lots of trees, lots of hedging and so on. But it will be a generation, as Councillor Hallam said, before that has any impact. So someone born today will be 20 or 25 before the screening will make any form of impact. Pumping stations to get rid of water. I don't need, a number of us live near to flood situations. Pumping stations fail. You know, this isn't the Fens, this is Kettering. And to have that sort of mitigation to make this work, again, doesn't actually seem in any sense right. What has happened, and I also pick up from Parish Council and Clive Hallam, is when you look at those two plans, and maybe as officers you'll reflect back on them, it's about 1/4 the size of the landscape bunding impact between Isham and this warehousing facility. So the Joint Planning Unit said yes, for whatever reason, this is a place to build warehouses on a hillside. What has happened is the developer has pushed and pushed and squeezed and squeezed. And that's not our planning officer's fault, but I think it is at this time when the committee have the opportunity to think about the community and other impacts, to just send this back and say, we want that landscaping bund to the level that was originally put in policy, which councillors predecessors to yourselves said was acceptable. When you look at the junction coming into the site, all of that traffic headlights are going to shine into Isham. So we've got a road network, and I accept that that's been put in previously, but now we're having to mitigate the impact of that, that the traffic comes all the way from the A14, which is already a noisy environment, right up to the edge of the village, and then turns into this site. Equally, Councillor Hallam said that the bypass, which would not have come anywhere near here, has been adjusted to enable this development to take place, also brings traffic very close to the village. Previously, it was closer towards Pytchley. So from that point of view, it really is a shame that we are in this situation, but I would heartily suggest, given the circumstances, that the committee reject these particular aspects and conditions being disposed of tonight, and goes back to the developer and say, all right, you've got your permission, but make this much more amenable and much more green, if you like, to the people that are local. The other aspect of this, and I have to make that point, maybe the last time I'll be able to make it, still no mitigation on the village of Pytchley for the traffic which will come off the A509 and cut back from the A43 into this site. No one's ever listened to that particular issue. The last point I would make is that the developer was asked by the JPU to put green roofs onto these warehouses, and apparently green roofs and solar PV, if one understands what solar PV is, are compatible. And at least given the destruction of the landscape this is going to cause, had the green roofs and had solar energy panels been put onto this development, it would settle more into the landscape than it is. So I really think we have got a dog's dinner of an application. I don't blame our planning officers really, because they have a developer who I think has bullied us into having to accept this. And I hope the committee will reject it, that it empower our officers to go back and say, this is not acceptable, that bunding needs to be in, that brook needs to be properly catered for, and until you do it, we're not going to approve it. Chairman, thank you very much for letting me speak on behalf of Pytchley and to some degree the villagers of Isham as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You'll be back in the waiting room. You can watch the rest on YouTube.
I look forward to it.
And our final speaker is Peter Frampton. Who's not there? Cool. Hello, Mr. Frampton. You're on mute at the moment.
At least given the destruction.
But you need to turn your YouTube.
Yeah.
Or silence it.
Thank you.
Okay, you've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. When the Chancellor delivers his budget speech tomorrow, we will learn of the parlous state of the UK economy. While we await to see what fiscal measures may be made, I believe that it's beyond peradventure the Chancellor will identify an essential need for economic growth in the making of investment and provision of new job opportunities. The applicant proposes an investment of some 40 million in preparing Kettering South for new occupiers to the area. Occupiers will, however, not select Kettering South without confidence that plots will be delivered to meet their timescales. Hence the importance of the site preparatory works being commenced as soon as possible, i.e. those before you, earthworks, site road infrastructure, utilities and drainage. It is not possible to develop this site, as with any greenfield site, without a major impact on the character of the area. And the core strategy has settled the need for this development and accepted the inevitability of landscape change. And as your planning officer has made clear, landscaping is not there to conceal new development. That's rarely achievable. Rather, the purposes of landscaping is to soften the visual impact on future buildings. The policy requirement is to minimise the visual effect, which is achieved when the benefits of the development outweigh the impact. The landscaping has been strengthened since submission with additional tree planting, Some of them are 4.5 metres in height, so they will grow certainly with effect within 10 years. Not a generation has just been put to you. Scots pine is also included in the mix to provide some all year round screening. In addition, tree planting and hedgerow is planted on the southern edge of the access road to provide close screening to vehicles on the access road. Just dealing with the landscaping strip on the southern boundary, that accords with the landscaping strip shown on the parameters plan on the outline planning permission. That is the determining point, not the little plan that's in the core strategy. Some 19,000 trees and shrubs are proposed in this application, and meadow planting of 14 football pitches in scale. In terms of flooding, 3 pumps are proposed for surface water, 1 as standby. Even if all 3 fail, there is sufficient storage within the swale, that's along the central access road, and then if that overtopped, it would go into the employment yards, not anywhere near Isham. Turning to Pytchley, there is already an approved construction management plan with a construction traffic management plan. That sets out roads that are forbidden for heavy HGVs, including Pytchley Road. There's a weight restriction on that road in any event, and there is a management system for any breaches so that people will be able to report to the site if they believe those provisions have been breached. So in my submission, this site was allocated almost 5 years ago. I urge members to grant this permission so this development can start straight away. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Frampton. We'll put you back in the waiting room. You can watch the rest on YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. A few points to raise, and I guess I have to declare an interest. As many of you will know that my house was flooded on Christmas Eve, and this affected actually that entire area over the Christmas period, and the amount of water there. In fact, the road had to be closed so the fire brigade could pump the water away to be able to reopen the road for it. I know there's 3 pumps going in, and I know that they're saying that there's going to be enough water there. But if you're building concrete on a land which saturates water, that water is just going to overflow even more and cause even more flooding. I appreciate the amount of greenery that they're planning on planting, and I think that is great. But the point that it is going to take 20 to 25 years for it to grow means that those travelling along that road are going to have a complete eyesore for the next 20 to 25 years. And what is a picturesque village that you're actually travelling through as well. I just think it's wrong that we are doing or proposing to do this. Anybody that travels that road as well, they will know that that traffic in the morning is absolutely horrendous and can back along all the way up to the Venture Park estate. So to increase traffic there by putting big lorries, big construction traffic into another roundabout, it just seems absolutely ludicrous. And I don't underestimate anybody that actually wants to get to Wellingborough in the morning or vice versa coming home in the evening. I am actually against these plans and will be voting against.
Thank you. Can I just point out that we're only looking at the reserve matters. So we're only looking at the internal roads, the parking, landscaping and drainage. We're not the route on the main road has already been agreed in the outline application. The roundabout has already been agreed, and the heights of the buildings have already been agreed. So we're only looking at those items. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, it's just going to be a very, it's just going to be a very quick question, basically. Earlier on in Richard's oh God, I can't even get my words out. Speech about this. He mentioned 100 Scots pines being delivered. In the paperwork, it says 2,000 Scots pines. Now, as trees are such a big thing of this, which is it? Is it 100, as was mentioned early on. I didn't note the time it was mentioned, unfortunately. Is it 2,000 or is it the 19,000 that has just been mentioned by the person speaking for the application? As this is about landscaping, and with this being something that's going to be 20 years in the future, I think we need to know what the actual amount of trees that are going to be there. Thank you.
Richard, can you confirm?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the 19,000 number is taken from the overall number. So if you look on either, the numbers are twice, but if you look on page 42 of the report, there's a bullet point summary of the specimens. So they've got 7,200 trees, 4,000 native shrubs, and over 8,000 native hedge plants. And then it goes on to the wet woodland, the meadowland, and the wetlands.
Yeah.
On the Scots pine, that's on the southern. If you look on page, I just want to find the references. I've highlighted it previously. Look on page 41 of the agenda papers. It's the second paragraph. To the critical 550 long southern edge of the site, over 100 trees of varying specimens will be planted, with many ranging from a planting height of 2.5 to 4.5 metres.
Chairman, I think in the first bullet point of page 42, it does state overall nearly 2,000 Scots pines. So I think that's the figure that we should go with in terms of the overall number of Scots pines.
Okay. Councillor O'Hara.
Yeah, just a quick questions. The JPU has tried to protect us from such developments and has tried to engage with developers alike. Concerns in this area all the time, and I remember when we first started building the 5,000 houses, the new pipeline had to put in, the new sewage pipeline, and they came along the A6 and they didn't because the sill lines are no good there. So they had to run it round the A6 and it goes across the land and along there goes out to Wellingborough. The concern is that the water that runs off it already actually doesn't run off because it soak away more because there's so much flooding going on. Why we flood, and bad this year, we could paddleboard on it. That's how bad flooding was. But I don't think this landscaping bund is going to work. There should be a much higher bund up there with the trees that will soak up the water. Scots pine, only if you're going to put in very mature Scots pine, which costs more money. It's not going to do any good putting those hedges. That just won't do it. It'll flood and it'll wash them all away anyway. It's pointless putting all local species in that achieve nothing and won't soak up the water. What I want to know is, what is the runoff rate? What will be the runoff rate when these buildings are in place? Where will it go? Because I can't see that on page, pages now, but it says it's 18,000 something that they will be able to be held if those 3 pumps fail. Those pumps won't be able to with it. I think it's 18,000 metres squared if the pumps fail. Where, and the other question is, where will that water go to that pump, where are they going to put it? Because if those pumps fail and it says that it's going to go back into the site, it can only sit there on the site. It's got to go somewhere. So is it going to go on the A14? Is it going to go onto the railway lines? Where is it going to go? Or is it going to go back down to Scott's house? You know, and that area and flood all hotel and everything. And it would just put Kettering at a standstill. And my final question is, med planting, etc., and it says it's going to be the equivalent of 1440. That doesn't make any odds. We don't know where it's going to go. And it's just the actual presence of it. It's going to be so overbearing. And I think in the original application when that came in, wasn't there something that whereby we were asked to put in that extra roundabout that traffic off the A40 does
Sorry,
not
Councillor, I can't understand what you're saying.
I was asking if wasn't there something in the original application to say the traffic should go into Gresham? If it goes into the site, should go back to the site and onto the A14. That was my only other question.
Richard, do you want to answer any of those?
Yeah, so some of them I may not have picked up fully, so please come back to me. Yeah, I'll try and cover the points. About flooding and runoff, yeah, it's covered in the section of the report. The key aspect is obviously we look to the experts on this, and the lead local flood authority and the Environment Agency are content with the submissions that have been made and the details, and have agreed them. And as covered in the report on some of the flooding details on the outline consent, they have actually allowed us to approve those conditions. So the scheme has largely been agreed prior to this submission. On the runoff rates, as covered in the report, the runoff rates are proposed to be the same as in the site at the moment, as in Greenfield runoff rates. So anything beyond that would be held back within the swales and within the attenuation within the site until such time as it could then be discharged at an appropriate rate at a later time. So the overall sort of flooding strategy has been agreed by both the lead local flood authority and the Environment Agency, and that's why us as officers are content about that. On the sort of traffic, obviously that's and the other issues. Obviously, this is a reserve matters application. This local planning authority has approved the outline application, which set the parameters and the parameters plan. So anticipated the level of development and the level of trips that would be generated. It approved that application. It's also approved the, as I covered in the report, it's also approved the dualling scheme. So those aspects are not before us this evening. I'll probably just touch on it because I may get other questions, but I'll probably just touch on what I remember. Important thing that I didn't cover in the report, if I can just take you to slide page 51F in the agenda papers, which I don't know if it's useful, Callum, for you just pull the PowerPoint again so people who are viewing can see. And it's that parameters plan with the sort of the part of land divided into sort of 3 rectangles. Stop. Yeah, perfect. On the it's an important point to make. On the outline application, the parameters were set. Heights of the buildings were set, but also overall heights were set for each of those plots of land. And at that point, I think it's mentioned by one of the councillors from Isham, at that point a sort of terraced proposal was anticipated. So there wasn't anticipated that the whole site would be the same level platform as is proposed here. But in the key on that page, it's easy to see on your paper. So on the key, on the right-hand side of that page 51F, you'll see that there's maximum heights expressed in above ordnance datum heights, but also maximum ridge heights for the individual buildings. And then if you link that to, which is easy to do in your agenda papers, link that to page 51E, which talks about the platform level and the finished floor level for the site. You'll see that the finished floor level is 58 metres. So we've got an overall, so the development platform, so essentially where those plots 1, 2, 3 and 4 on that diagram are, we've got proposed here through this reserve map a finished floor level of 58 metres. And if you go back to the 51F diagram, so this diagram here, you'll see that the ridge heights are set. So what in effect is happening through this scheme is that the anticipated height of the buildings has been lowered than what was anticipated at the outline stage. Fortunately, I did the maths before committee, although it might take some time. So, for example, plot 2, it's got obviously the finished floor level of 58 metres. The development outline has got a maximum ridge height of 18 metres. So the maximum ridge we're talking about there is 76 metres above ordnance datum. But if you look on the annotation on the plan, it's got a maximum height there of 81 metres. So potentially there's 5 metres less. That parcel of land is 5 metres lower, a maximum 5 metres lower than was anticipated at the outline stage. And likewise, plot 3, which is obviously that plot that's closest to Isham, you've got, obviously there's still the same 58 metre level, again in 18 maximum ridge, 18 plus the 58, I feel a bit like Carol Boardman, but equals 70 metres above ordnance datum ridge. And if you look on the annotation on that plan there, we've got a 78 metre above ordnance datum. So in levelling the whole site, particularly to that western area, plot 2, 5 metres, and plot 3, 2 metres, the actual built form is actually lower than anticipated, and that must be considered in line with obviously those landscape aspects and the overall sort of visual impact of the development. I'll just, while I've got it as well, I know there was obviously comment in some of the presentations about green roofs. That was covered at the outline application, and there's condition 31, which consistent with policy 9 of the Joint Core Strategy, which is the energy efficiency policy, and policy 37, which is the policy which covered this site. There's a BREEAM, so a building research establishment condition. So the individual parcels and the individual buildings have to meet those BREEAM standards. So that would address some of those sorts of sustainability elements that came up earlier on. I'll probably leave it there for the time being. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, could I just make a point and to follow on from that in terms of answering one of the councillor's questions? And Richard, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but in relation, so this is the premises plan, which has been approved as part of the outline application, is that right? I take it as being right.
Yes, sorry, yes, yeah, I was nodding. I don't know if you can see me. Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, I couldn't. So the issue in relation to the strategic landscaping buffer, while that was in the core spatial strategy as a indicative guidance, when councillors made the decision on the outline, obviously they've taken a view that the landscaping would be less than that set out in the core spatial strategy. So, you know, the landscaping which has come on with this application, unless Richard is to tell me differently, is compatible with the outline that has already been consented. So I think, you know, members need to bear in mind the fact that there is a substantial amount of trees and hedges going into this proposal, and it is in line with the higher level outline application that's already been consented. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, James. Yeah.
Richard, sorry.
Councillor, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. The pumping station, 3 pumping stations, where the water's going to go, and you mentioned something about, is there an attenuation pond or something? Or is that what you're calling the swale? So is that what around the perimeter is going to the water, or is there a balancing pond, attenuation pond or something? Is mean in addition to the swale? And again, where
there's the swale. Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, there's the swale that runs to the east of the access road, and then to the east of the site itself, between the site and the railway, there is, I made some notes so I got the right name for it. There is the, sorry, bear with me. There is the flood mitigation channel. So there's another depression on the eastern side of the site, which you can see. You can actually see it in those cross sections on page. If you look at the cross sections on page 51D, the bottom 2 on the right-hand side of that is that another depression at the end of the plateau, and you'll see in the middle of the site is that swale depression as well. But there's also, as covered in the report, there's also proposed to be some underground storage as well within individual plots.
Yes, is that what the 18,000 square meters, Richard? The underground storage? No?
So we didn't catch all of that, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Sorry, the 18,000 square meter underground storage, and is that where the water's going to be pumped to? Where is it going to?
No, the 18,000 square meters. I think I'm trying to find the reference on that page. I think the 18,000 square meters is the capacity of the site or the capacity of the swale. The surface water runoff would be discharged into the river, but like I said, only, and that's with the agreement of the Environment Agency and the local flood authority, but only at the current rate. Anything beyond the current rate would be held within the site.
Okay. We're coming up to the 2-hour guillotine before we carry on. Are we all happy to carry on?
Agreed.
Yes,
And
Chair.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Thurland.
Thank you. Before my main points, on page 34, it says, Anglian Water has said, the proposed method of surface water discharge does not relate to Anglian Water assets and therefore outside of our jurisdiction. So whose jurisdiction does it come under? And then my other points are listening to the speakers. Yes, we do want investment, but not at any price. Mr. Hobbs was pointing out that the landscaping is under provision as opposed to the outline. So which is right. The ridge height, as you're saying, is the same as the outline planning. It's not higher. And now it looks like we started with DB Symmetry. So now we've got another company. And I would like to know what difference this is to what was agreed at outline, and I really mean the differences in height, the bunding and the water, Richard, please, because what I don't want to do is for us, because we haven't got the outline details with us, is to say yes to this and then we find out, like one of the gentlemen said, we've got sold a pig in a poke sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try and cover those points, Councillor. So the jurisdiction bit, the surface water is the lead local flood authority. So that's the comment from Anglian Water. The relevant authority for surface water is the lead local flood authority.
Is that us?
Which will be us from the 1st of April, yes. Yeah, it's currently the county council, forms part of the county council, yes. Yeah.
So any flood problems will be down to us. As normal.
Surface water flooding, yes, yeah.
Thank you on that bit.
The under provision of landscaping, there isn't an under provision. I think Mr. Hobbs, as James alluded to, was referencing the width, the indicative width that was shown in that diagram accompanying the joint core strategy policy. But yes, as I showed, that parameters plan on page, what was it, 51F or whatever, like 51F, sorry, I think. Yeah, 51F. That parameters plan it forms part of the approved plans for the outline. If you look at that plan and then correspond that with the landscaping plan, which in the agenda papers is afterwards. It's the summary plan is on page 51H. You can see that access and the width of that landscaping provision correspond. It's the overall, obviously in the outline application, one of the key considerations was the overall impact of allowing the quantum of development on this site. And obviously, as I mentioned about those heights, and talking about those heights, yeah, obviously this is consistent with those heights set at outline stage. And as I sort of highlighted a few minutes ago, it is even on a couple of the plots lower than could have been anticipated at that time. The outline application was only outlined with access. And as I've shown in the PowerPoint presentation, obviously there was some details, illustrative master plans to give a flavour or an idea of the nature of the built form that could come forwards.
And
But it was only those two matters that came forward at that stage. So obviously the details of landscape and layout, appearance, and scale didn't come forward at that point. Obviously, this is seeking to set out the development platforms, and then the individual buildings or one or more buildings would have to come forward through additional reserved matters at a later date.
And then what about the green roofs that they were saying that was going to blend in? Is that
the green roofs? As I said, the green roofs, obviously that's covered by the joint core strategy policy, which doesn't specifically reference green roofs, but talks about obviously achieving green sustainability elements as part of a site, and obviously for sites of this scale, achieving more than could be achieved on smaller sites.
Is that something we could condition or not?
No, because that's already conditioned. Like I said, that's already conditioned on condition 31 of the outline.
Right,
So we couldn't condition something that's already on the outline again.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Okay, next is Councillor Titcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I'm not going to bore you too much, Chair, because you've heard me say this before, but this constant building on floodplains is, well, it's going to cause us a problem. I know there is mitigation involved here to pump it away. Don't know how quick those pumps work, but sometimes in a downpour, it might be overwhelmed. But unfortunately, we seem to keep doing that, and nobody seems to be paying too much attention. I've got a cracked record sometimes. Suggestion: we must look further into this. I mean, before I didn't realise they're going to try land levelling here. It's not a good idea when you start moving vast quantities of topsoil around and stuff like that, because it's there for a reason. I'm struggling. I mean, I feel sorry for people. I mean, well, Councillor Edwards, you have my sympathy there, because I can see that your insurance premium is going to go up next year, and we're causing a lot of people this same problem. Part of our job is to try and protect people, but this seems to be going against the grain. I will vote in favour of it, but I want more sort of made. And somewhere along the line, please have got to stop this building on floodplains, because it's not working. It's just causing problems for other people. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those difficult situations, isn't it? We've already set the precedent, really, with the outline planning application being approved a while ago. And I think what happens is new things come on the agenda, like the flooding that happened over the Christmas period. But we've already set the precedent and set the approval. Just on the mathematics of the ridge heights. So you explained, Richard, plots 2 and 3. On that same mathematics, does that mean that plot 1 is now higher?
No, it's the same. It ends up being it's the same. There's no difference. It's the same. It can't be any higher than originally approved. So it's the same height. The change was in plots 2 and 3, because that's the higher part of the site.
Okay, and adding up the figures that you said before, which is the ground level 58 and the maximum ridge height 23, comes to 81. And on the figures on the plans, it says the maximum height 79.
Yeah, but your maths is right, but it won't because of the parameters on the outline. It won't be able to go above that height. So, i.e., if it is the 58 metres finished floor level, the building on whatever the plot you're looking at, sorry, plot 1 won't be able to be whatever that maximum height is. It'll have to be lower to accord with the height level.
Oh, so they have to drop the ridge height then?
So it won't. So I'm trying to get the right page so I can actually answer the question without going off the top of my head. Sorry, Hannah. So on the plot one, yes, obviously on plot one, you've got again, it's maximum building height of 23 metres. But clearly, like you said, if through this the finished floor level is 58 metres, then the maximum ridge level they'll be allowed to have is 21, because the 58 and the 21 will equal the 79.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
I'll take advice from Emma, but Councillor Jelly, because you missed a significant amount of the debate, I don't think you'll be able to take part in this. No. Okay, so Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Amy. I just want to go back to the flooding. You know, we are removing 9 metres of soil from that ground. That water has got to go somewhere. Now, I'm not saying this just to protect myself, because there was 30 other houses where I live that were affected. It's got to go somewhere. That water is either going to go that way, or it's going to go that way into the village of Isham and flood them that, or it's going to flood the A14, a major route, you know, to Folkestone, to Birmingham, all that way. We need to stop building this. Councillor Titcombe has said that we need to stop building on floodplains, and then he's going to vote for the application. The way of stopping this is to vote this application down.
Thank you. Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Chair. You know, having listened to the debate, listened to the speakers, etc., you know, there's clearly an issue here with floodplain. You know, this building on floodplains. You know, I work for an insurance company. We know all about floodplains. We pick up the tab. And looking what you've got here, you talk about that, but I think the railway runs along the other edge of it, doesn't it? I mean, there's probably potential at flooding the railway, because you have got such a massive area here. And you're telling me you've got 3 pumps that are going to pump all this water away. But I'm not, as everyone else tells me, where's it going? How certain are we that it's not going to flood anywhere else? And the fact that you had floods this year at Christmas tells you you've got a big problem there. And you're asking me now to approve something that's going to potentially cause flooding. I'm not confident of what they say. The other point I think is on the trees, etc. It says we've got so many thousand trees and 2,000 pines, but I would actually like to see where they're going, because to me, if you're going to put something in that area so vast, it needs an awful lot of trees. Okay, it might take 5 to 10 years, but we have to be certain they are going to cover that up. I've been to estates in Leeds, etc., and they are well surrounded by trees. You could, you know, you hardly know they're there at points, and they're pretty high. And I'm worried here that, you know, I can't see where the trees are going to go. I'm told it's the entire site, but it's really where the aesthetics of the site, where people are going past it, people who live in the village don't want to look at it. And I think I'm not overconfident of where all these trees are going to go. Are they sufficient? And when they just say around the whole site, to me, there should have been a plan. Well, okay, we need trees along this area. We need a higher density of trees there to hide it from, you know, to help Isham, so they're not having to stare at it every day. From the edge of the roads where people are going past, it should be there. And I just don't see any tree plan. It's just, we're going to put so many thousand trees. And I'm a bit worried. I think the combination of the flooding, which I'm not confident that it's not going to cause more problems than we already had when the ground actually was taking the water. When you put this in here, that water's got to go somewhere. So we've lost all that land that acts as drainage for the water. So you've got double almost to the same area opposite or towards Isham. So I don't think I can actually vote for it. I'm not confident that it's, you know, I think you've got a problem with flooding, and nobody's convinced me otherwise.
Richard, do you want to come back on that, or James?
I'm flooded. No, sorry, Chair, I feel I'm going a bit around in circles here, but yeah, I'm flooded. I obviously understand members' concerns, but yeah, we obviously look to the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority on both aspects and on other conditions on the outline are happy with the detail that's there. I understand obviously the concern, particularly given what happened at Christmas, but obviously we have to look to the experts. It's obviously worth touching, worth pointing out the sort of history of the site, that obviously the site's been through the development plan process through policy 37. It's been identified as a site. People like the Environment Agency have at that time had their input into the decisions that have made which sites go forward through the development plan process. That's been subject to an independent examination and been found to be sound, hence why there's that policy in the Joint Core Strategy. We as the local authority have then subsequently assessed the outline application, knowing that it's in floodplain 2 and 3, and then considered it to be acceptable. So it's going to be difficult for us then now with the Environment Agency and lead local flood authority saying that it's acceptable. It's going to be difficult for us to then raise the issue of flooding, given the history and the evolution of the development and the various consents on the site. On the tree planting details are on the particularly the ones for the south of the site are on that page 51H. On that landscaping plan on 51H. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, can I just kind of make a comment that I think, just to reiterate what Richard's saying, as planners, we're not hydrologists, and we kind of would take the views of the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority in relation to what requirements they need. Now, clearly, when allocating sites in the future, I'm sure that there will be, due to climate change and whatever else, consideration in terms of where future sites are located in relation to floodplains. But it's not to say that mitigation and management of flood risk on individual sites cannot, as this application is suggesting, achieve greenfield runoff rates which are acceptable and which are no different from the existing greenfield site. I think the applicant mentioned that what would happen if there were an absolute unintended event, very, very strong event, that the car parking areas would inundate rather than any other parts of any other site outside of the red line. And that's what happens in other kind of developments such as Rushton Lakes, where it was specifically designed in relation to flooding those areas, not the retail areas, but the actual car park area, as well as having flood mitigation on top of that. So I think we have to go by the consultation responses that we've received from the relevant authorities. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Richard, can I just go back to Councillor Adams saying about the height? So are we, forgive me if I've got this wrong, are we saying that the height that shed is going to be built can't be built because it doesn't meet the outlined agreed height, even though it says that's what they want? And this is just a comment. That area has been flooded twice now, and if flood mitigation policies work, why do properties still flood regularly? There's just a question for that. I really would like clarification on that height. I'm sorry if I'm labouring.
It's all right. No, it's fine. Yeah. Maybe I'm not making myself clear. Yeah, on that plot 1, obviously that parameters plan. If you turn to page 51F, that parameters plan, obviously it relates to the outline application. And obviously, still to date, as we sit here now, we're not sure of the actual height or the built form of the individual parcels that are to come forward on the site, because obviously they would be subject to later reserved matters applications. Obviously, all we've got, if this was to be approved tonight, is an outline application that sets the quantum of development. And then through this application, a level platform and a road with some landscaping around. We haven't actually got any buildings yet. And if any buildings on it, we would need the detailed consent to relate to reserved matters.
So would that come back to us, though? Would that come back to us?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So that parameters plan, because obviously at the outline stage, we had to have some degree of certainty about what was the biggest thing that could be on the site. Those parameters are the biggest things that could come forward on that site. Now, obviously time and the course of events has superseded that parameters plan, in that now the developer's proposing a single platform with, as shown on that plan on 51E.
So are we saying we could turn that down at the next one then?
We're not discussing, the sheds themselves aren't being discussed tonight.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. So if when the
But yeah, put in simple terms, for example, on that plot 1, if the finished floor level is 58 metres, as shown on that plan on page 51E, so if through this plateau the finished floor level is 58 metres, and also to make clear, there's also just for belts and braces, there's a finished floor level condition on the outline consent, so we will check that through that consent anyway, irrespective of this tonight. But if it is that 58 metres, then anything above 21 metres in height for that plot 1 wouldn't accord with the outline consent.
And you wouldn't be able to change that by condition?
Change
The height by condition, if they wanted it that taller?
They could come in with a different application and a new outline.
Right.
But obviously at the moment that parameters are set through that permission, and anything beyond that would obviously have a different impact, and therefore we would have to look at it afresh.
Right, and those people that are saying this flood mitigation stuff is all well and good are the ones that are already putting the flood mitigation in and they're still flooding. Because it's the same companies, isn't it? Same businesses with the flood mitigation people, it's Anglian Water, and saying yes, it's fine, but their areas still flood. Just
yeah, I can't comment on the expertise of Anglian Water or the Environment Agency.
Yeah, we're listening to somebody that their stuff doesn't work anyway because they're still flooding. But I appreciate what you're saying, and thank you for that clarification on the height. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the Councillor Thurden's asked the question basically if the calculations, if those buildings are going to be built, then they're too high. My biggest concern is I've just looked on Google Earth, and on Google Earth it shows it as a massive flood and floods without heavy rain now. So to take away all that earth and lower it, it's got nowhere to go. It's still not clear really where they're going to put the water to. If they pump into the river, it's bad enough now, and when the Environment Agency clearing it, which isn't as often would need to, it doesn't go very well, so it clogs anyway, which is why it floods Weetabix all the time, floods over the railway, and that's why they've had to do all that down on the railway. So I'm still very concerned about that, and I really don't. This is a good application. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Titcombe, is it something new?
Yes. The moving of earth is it won't make any difference actually to the land cover area of the warehouses. We would still have that same problem. It doesn't matter about the earth. They're trying to level it up. I'm speaking here in defence of the planning officers. That's unusual, isn't it? But the levelling it up, I understand this, why they're doing it. I don't like the idea of it, but you're still going to have the same ground cover area, whether the house is built there or warehouses. It will still have a runoff of water regardless. Just the level will be different, and it's there for aesthetics. That was it, Chair.
Okay. So no more speakers and the recommendations to approve. So do I have a proposer for approval or an amendment?
I'd like to amend that we reject this application on the grounds of impacts on flooding and drainage.
Second that, Chair.
Okay. Oh, there is Eden, if you want to do a vote.
So this vote is for the amendment to refuse. Councillor Thurland.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For the amendment.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Jelly, I believe, is going to abstain.
Yeah.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Titcombe.
Against.
Which one is it, Councillor? Because you've put abstain up.
Oh,
Can you make it clear?
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Councillor O'Hara
For the amendment.
and Councillor Morton.
For the amendment.
That's 5 for, 2 against and 1 abstention, Chair.
Okay, so that application KET 2020-0745 is refused.
Oh dear.
Okay, are we all happy to carry on with the last application?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so 5-3. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully no maths involved in this one. Let's see. This is change of use from drinking establishment to flats. Sorry, I got wrong. Shit in the paper. At Meeting Lane in Kettering. So this is the Jasper's Bar proposal that sits to the southwest of Meeting Lane, opposite the Toller Church. It's the Toller Church that have objected to this proposal. Next slide, please. So these are the elevations of the building. Give me a second. He was facing in front of the screen. So these are the elevations of the building. You'll see from history that there was a scheme for an additional flat that was refused at committee last spring / early summer. And the difference between is covered nicely in the proposed development section on page 54. So that original scheme was for a total of 6 flats, because there was the existing 2-bed flat, and then 5 additional flats were proposed in the area where the bar used to be. This proposed scheme reduces that to total number to 5, because there's the existing 2-bed flat and the 4 proposed flats. There's been a reduction in 1 from that previous scheme. So the elevations and the floor plans of the site. So bottom right is the existing floor plans of the building, and the left-hand side, the bottom left-hand side of the proposal are the proposed elements. To note on the bottom left diagram, at first floor, sorry, the left-hand diagram, the middle left diagram, so diagram 1, the ground floor proposed plan, you'll see at the top of that diagram, there's 2 small courtyard areas proposed through some demolitions of some rear stores at the proposal, and that was one of the concerns at the previous application about the amenity space provision. So there's those 2 courtyard areas there for the flat units. The flats accord with national space standards. There's also the provision there you'll see on that same plan, that's a ground floor proposed. Left-hand side in the middle, you'll see there that there's the the dedicated cycle storage, 1 cycle space per bedroom, per bed, and also the bin provision there as well. The objections you'll see in the committee papers are primarily about access, traffic, and parking. So it's an existing site with an existing bar use, and therefore it's a site that obviously not currently, but could have a number of deliveries, a number of arrivals and departures, at all times of the day, using the existing Meeting Lane, which is obviously a long-standing road within the heart of the town centre. Therefore, the traffic generation from this site is, given that there's no parking, is likely to be the same or less than the existing approved use on the site. On the parking provision, that was a concern at the last scheme. Obviously, they've reduced the number of units by 1 now. They've obviously increased the cycle storage element. And you'll see in the committee papers that there is the reference to the policy 6, I think from memory, of the town centre area action plan, which talks about the notion of 0 parking within the town centre, obviously where there are alternatives modes of transport and other accessibility options at close distances, which obviously is the case in this instance. The final matter that I believe was picked up last time and so comments is that in related to fire provision and concerns about the narrow nature of meeting lane from both ends and the pinch points between buildings, which is obviously an existing relationship and nothing related to this proposal, but is obviously of note to this scheme, which is looking to provide residential accommodation through the change of use. And you'll see that the applicant has agreed to sprinkler system as part of the proposal, and that's conditioned. Also, there was other concerns, I think, previously about security, and there's CCTV across the entrances and internally proposed. So they've sought to address that area of concern as well. So overall, given the amendments that have been made from that previous scheme, officers are of the opinion that this scheme is acceptable and have recommended it for approval, but subject to those conditions set out in the agenda. Next slide, please. I'll take you just through the photographs. So this is the existing building. So that's the main entrance to the access to the orientation north of the building. Next slide, please. And that's the other side of it. There, so there you can see the 3-story end of the building, and then to the left of that photograph, the existing sort of where it drops down into that 2-story element. Next slide, please. And that's again looking at the adjacent residential development to the rear. I think that's it. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you just go back to that elevation plan, please, Callum. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, perhaps we should be pleased, Chair, to see a reduction of 1 whole flat from 6 to 5, but I still see that the same possible number of 18 people sleeping in this building, so that part of the overdevelopment hasn't changed. Plus in flat 1, I see a lounge diner plus a separate dining room, which could lead us to wonder whether this will then be turned into a bedroom. And I know we can only go by what we see, but it doesn't stop us wondering. On the plans, it shows 2 2-bed flats for 3 people and then 1 2-bed flat for 4 people. So why isn't, is that just a play on numbers? Because each of those 2-bed flats could be for 4 people. So that could be even more residents in that one building. So to me, the problems that we've seen on the previous application hasn't been addressed. The amenity space is now 2 small courtyards where they've knocked 2 sheds down or two outside buildings for less than half the number of the flats. I'm not sure how big this space is, but it's not going to be very big for 4 or 6 people that could possibly be living there. And if there was a fire there, have they got to climb the wall to get out? And perhaps we could heed Councillor Adams' words last week at full council on the climate change issue when she brought to our attention that place that planning takes here. And item 7 of the MPP says effective spatial planning is an important part of a successful response to climate change as it can influence the emission of greenhouses. Are these sustainable for the future? I don't think so. I can see us becoming a town of 1-bedroom flats and we're making no conscious effort for the well-being of residents, no discernible outside space. So washing is going to be dried indoors, and as we know, air drying indoors has a negative effect on the occupants due to damp and condensation. Using a tumble dryer has a detrimental impact on the environment and is costly to run. Where will the children play? Because these are 2-bedroom flats which you're likely to have families in. I think the application, it says future occupiers would be seeking convenience and access to services and facilities rather than amenity space. I think that's a little presumptuous, especially with what we've seen over the past 12 months. On the original flat, which is not changing, I can see 5 rooms, but I can't see a bathroom nor any sanitary ware which would suggest such a room. And it shows a fire window there, which I think that just indicates it's big enough to get through in the event of a fire. But if there was a fire in the stairwell, how would these residents escape? And then the bin storage, well, I don't think the fire officer likes bin storage is inside buildings, sited next to a bedroom window. It's under another bedroom with the windows, two huge 1100 litre bins. So they're going to hold an enormous amount of waste, which isn't going to be very nice in the summer. I just think there is not enough amenity space for these people. We're trying to get as many people in. It might be one flat less, but it's still the same amount of people or even more. And it's offering poor living conditions and amenities for future occupiers. And I still think that's still a valid reason for rejecting this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I tried to hurry.
Councillor O'Hara.
Chair, you'd be pleased to know that Councillor Thurl practically said what I wanted to say. I think it's fit for purpose. It's a poor and you still the same people in small space. It's not good for health, well-being, and I think you're going to end up causing health problems. Drying indoors doesn't work, and there's no space to enjoy. I just don't think this works at all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm thoroughly disappointed with this coming back. We gave the applicant a perfect, absolutely perfect opportunity with a very clear brief of why we refused it last time. And really, it's not changed. It literally has not changed. Yes, there's a number 1 flat reduced, but as Councillor Thurland's already stated, it hasn't reduced the amount of bodies that would be living under that roof. There's no talk of amenity space for flat number 5. I'm not sure where that is. And I mean, I can remember, and I'm sure other councillors can, the fire service always recommend that bin storage, even our own just normal street bins, should never be under windows. We've had serious fires, I remember in Wellingborough, with deaths. And at that particular moment in time, the fire service had a massive drive about not storing bins under windows. So I'm just really so disappointed. And obviously I've got to mention the car parking because I always do. You know, when do we say that Kettering Town Centre car parks are saturated? We don't keep records on it. We just keep putting more and more people into the town centre. I know we have the drive for sustainable transport and walking and push biking, etc. But we need to put that in place at the same time. You can't just expect people not to suddenly use cars when we haven't got that other infrastructure for them to use other forms of transport. I just can't support this. I think the applicant has really just completely shunned all the advice that we gave when we gave all the previous recommendations for refusal.
Okay, I've got no more speakers. I'm suspecting you might want to put an amendment forward.
Yes, Chair. Policy, the JCS 8, I think it's 8, isn't it? And then the policy 6 of the TCAAP says high density may be acceptable if proposals also conform to other policies, and the provision of 1-bed flats are the least flexible option.
Can we not go through a speech again, please?
Sorry, I'm just giving you reasons then. Policy JCS 8 and the same policies as we had last time with the bin storage, with the fire escape.
So, bin storage, amenity space.
Yeah.
JCS 8.
Overdevelopment with a number of people.
Yeah. I'm getting nods, so, okay. Eden, if you want to do a vote, please.
Councillor Chair, have we got a proposed and seconder?
Oh, sorry, the proposal was...
I'll propose it.
Can I second?
Take your pick, Councillor Adams or Councillor O'Hara to second it.
Councillor Adams, Councillor O'Hara has already seconded one this evening, so I'll go with Councillor Adams just to keep it inclusive.
Thank you.
So on to the vote for the the amendment. Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, for the change. Sorry.
Councillor Edwards.
For the amendment.
Councillor Adams.
For the amendment.
Councillor Jelly. Councillor Mitchell,
For the amendment.
Councillor Titcombe, Councillor O'Hara,
For the amendment, please.
and Councillor Morton.
For the amendment.
That is all fours and one abstention, so 7 fours, Chair.
Okay, so application KET 2020 0885 Jasper's Bar has been refused. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you, everybody.